I don't have a whole heck of a lot of experience with sheep. What experience I do have is more with sheep dogs. And I want to tell you a story about a particular dog that I knew years ago. I was asked to take care of Seamus, my priest dog, while he went on vacation. Father Henry's dog was an Irish setter and kind of a crazy dog. I think Irish setters generally fit that description. Well, I took Father Henry's dog, Seamus, for a walk. We both needed to get away and we both needed a little exercise, and so we went. It did not make for a very productive morning. Seamus she's a good dog, but she's high maintenance and very rambunctious and high energy, and she ran me ragged. Straining at the leash, running this way and running that way and sniffing every blade of grass, tugging me all over the neighborhood. She's an Irish setter, and that's kind of the type. So it didn't take very long, and Seamus and I were both worn out, so we went back to the house. I bent over and took the leash off of Seamus, and she was gone. I had forgotten to latch the screen door. And off she went. And the thought that popped into my head is, oh man, am I in trouble now? Seamus led me all over the Nashotah House neighborhood. The Nashotah House sits on 140 acres, and it's in the middle of farm country, and so the dog has lots of opportunity to run. I stood in Father Henry's front yard and I called to Seamus, and sure enough, she turned and would come running right back at me, 90 miles an hour. And then she'd run right past me at 90 miles an hour. And we played that game for a while. Until one time she didn't come back. And I got worried. Indeed, I got really worried. And I set off in the direction of where I had last seen her, and all I could think of was, oh my God, I lost Father Henry's dog. So with a heart as heavy as it could be, I trudged off looking for the stupid dog, leash in hand. I looked for this stupid dog for at least an hour and a half. Not a sign. I talked to people. I stopped cars driving down the road. I talked to people who were walking in the neighborhood. Nobody had seen an Irish setter. And I began to have visions of disaster. So, I turned around and I went back to Father Henry's house. I knew something about lost dogs, nothing about lost sheep. The thought occurred to me that I wish I had locked that door before I took the leash off. In fact, I preached a sermon a couple of Sundays after that having to do with what a leash is for on a dog. It's not to restrict them, it's to help them. It's to give them boundaries, to give them guidelines and keep them safe. Because right now, Seamus could be laying in a pool of blood somewhere. And that was a horrifying thought for me. And then the thought occurred to me, that's just like me. Indeed, it may be just like you. When we are let loose, we tend to run roughshod. We tend to run a little crazy. Seamus hates the leash. He fights against the leash. My dog Sarah does the same thing. We all want to run free, to discover whatever we want to explore, to go 90 miles an hour in one direction in just complete, perfect delight, and then to go running back the other direction 90 miles an hour just to tease our owner. It's not good for a dog. It's not good for us. The leash was supposed to keep Seamus out of trouble. It was supposed to keep Seamus from getting lost. It was supposed to keep Seamus from getting run over. And the truth of the matter is, you and I have a leash just like the dog does. You aware of that? In our Old Testament lesson from Exodus, it's the beginning of the story of our leash, our protection. If you obey my voice and keep my covenant, you shall be my own possession. It's the words of God to Moses. Our leash is the covenant law of the Ten Commandments, which occurs in the next chapter of Exodus. And I don't know a single person who really likes the Ten Commandments. In fact, these days in the state of Texas, we are requiring classrooms to post the Ten Commandments, but we don't require them to purchase one. If someone will buy the Ten Commandments for your local schoolroom, they have to put it up. Nobody likes it in reality. We fight against the Ten Commandments all the time. We try to find ways to squirm our way and worm our way out of them. Well, it's not really stealing, it's just a pen. I'm pretty famous for stealing the pens of bank tellers and Lord knows who else. By the way, have y'all ever heard of a thing called the Wicked Bible? It's just one of those little pieces of trivia that delights me so. Back yonder, when printing was a relatively new thing, a couple of little mistakes crept into the King James Version of the Bible. As you may know, a number of printers were commissioned to print the Bible when it was new. And this error happened in the year 1631. The first error was in the book of Exodus, chapter 20, verse 14. And it was very unfortunate. In fact, it became quite famous. That verse, one word was left out, so that verse read, "Thou shalt commit adultery." They left out the word "not." Oh my. The second mistake in that Bible happened in the following book in Deuteronomy 5:24, which says, "Behold, the Lord our God hath showed us his glory and his greatness." And a couple of letters were transposed, and that last word was misprinted. And that saying became, "Behold, the Lord our God hath showed us his glory and his great ass." Now, mind you, in that day the ass was a donkey, but boy, it does have great application today, doesn't it? If you find one of the Wicked Bibles somewhere, you will be a wealthy person, because there only remains 25 copies in the world that are known, and 18 of those copies are in museums. For you and I, the Ten Commandments seems to be restrictive to our conduct. Never mind the wicked violence. But we're looking at it wrong. We're looking at it kind of from a twisted perspective. The Ten Commandments are actually intended to be protective. They're intended to preserve us. It's like the leash that I used to contain Sarah, my current dog, and that I tried to use to contain Seamus, Father Henry's dog. While I was standing there with that stupid dog going back and forth in front of me, teasing me, tormenting me, it occurred to me that she was without control. And control is important, especially for those of us who don't like control. You and I go running off all week, more or less, doing who knows what, from Monday morning to Saturday evening. And then we come to church and we straighten up for an hour and a half, if we're lucky. And then we go back to running rampant. I understand today just a little better what that must be like for God, tending to us, his unruly, uncooperative sheep. Sometimes we just kind of run off for a little while and go play and come back. And sometimes we run off and we stay gone. I will admit to you all that back in my youth I stayed gone for 15 years. Yes, I attended church on Christmas and Easter. I was among the many. But I finally did return. And I'm kind of happy about that. Other people I know have yet to return. For the times that you and I have abandoned God in our lives, we have no leash. We have no protection other than how we were brought up or how we were conditioned. We have ourselves to lean on, and that's a pretty weak structure. We don't have that tether that we need. We tend to go our own way. We tend to get lost. We tend to get in trouble. To borrow from my illustration, we may wind up in the animal shelter. We may wind up in jail. We may wind up getting run over. You will find the Ten Commandments in a different place in our new prayer book. It's on, this is a great thing to remember. It's on page 100. And we say the Ten Commandments out loud a few times a year here at Ascension and St. Mark's. In some congregations, they never recite the Ten Commandments, but I think that's a little more rare than not. The Ten Commandments, that's our leash, that's our tether. That's what keeps you and I safe. It keeps us from getting lost. It keeps the word, it's a fancy word. I don't expect anybody to remember it, but I just want to show you all that I'm an educated man. It's what keeps the human trait of concupiscence under control. I wasn't sure I could remember that. While we may not like the leash, what we should learn to do is look upon the leash, look upon the Ten Commandments as an expression of God's love for us. The yard of my house has a fence that I try to keep in good repair. The funny thing about that fence is any of the dogs that I've had in recent years, save and except for one of them, were able to jump that fence at any time they wanted to, but they didn't. And I'm glad of that. Abby looked kind of like a watermelon with hair, so she couldn't jump that fence to save her life. The Ten Commandments are the law that God gave to his beloved people. The covenant and the best friend we've got. So I suppose, kind of like Paul Harvey, I should do the rest of the story, part of the story. Well, it turns out Amos ran through the cornfields, because he was covered with pollen, until he got tired, and then he came back home. He got there about the same time I got to the house. We were both worn out. We got our exercise that day, I can promise you. And I learned something. I learned something about how sheep get lost, how dogs get lost, and how people get lost. And I learned something about the value of a leash, and certainly the value of a fence. In our gospel today, Jesus sent out his disciples, and he told them to go to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Because that was his primary ministry field. He sent the disciples to their own people. And perhaps from that we can gather that God has sent you and I to our own people. We don't have to go to the ends of the world. We don't have to go out there somewhere to find the lost sheep. There are plenty of them right here in our neighborhood, right here in our town. I've got in an impromptu fashion, I've got to brag on our website. I got an email from somebody in the county. This happened day before yesterday. He sent the email. And he said, I got a little bit of a difficulty and I want to check in with you and see what you think. And I want you to tell me a little bit about your church, because I'm looking for the kind of church that is not as Protestant as many of them are in our area, but I don't want a Catholic church either. I want something in between. More like the Orthodox Church, who have remained unchanged for nearly 2,000 years, and I admire that. He said, I've heard that Anglicanism can be rather conservative. I've also heard that they can be rather progressive. Can you tell me about your church and yourself and who you are and what you're about? Holy smokes! This sounds like a lost sheep looking for a home, doesn't it? So I replied. I got kind of excited about it, and I wrote this long, rambling email, and I read it to Holly, and Holly said, don't do all that. Answer his questions and let it be done. She's a very wise woman. So I pared back what I had written, and then I added one thing. I said, at the end of my little email to him, I said, as Jesus said on many occasions, you want to know who we are? Just come and see. Join us. Come worship with us. And you'll find out who we are. That's how we go to the lost sheep. Come and see. Join us. Find out about this strange, weird bunch of people who have such an odd way of worshiping. Because you and I used to be lost ourselves. If you've never been lost in your lifetime, congratulations, you have a remarkably easy life. And I rejoice in that. Me and many of the others in this room, we have wandered before, and we've had our troubles before, and we have been out there having to dodge cars sometimes. Right here, you and I have a safe place. We have a leash, we have a yard, we have a fence, we have a home. A place that God has put us in for our protection. A place provided by God for us because He loves us. And because He grieves for those who are lost.
Amen.